We are now going to cross the threshold into that sacred space of exploring the archetypes of humanity, which are the roles that you play in your families, in your companies, in your communities, but also the roles that exist within you and those conversations and relationships that are happening that define your journey. This is going to be your primary archetype. It doesn't mean that you don't have access to the other three. It doesn't mean that there's a best or a worst. It simply means that you've spent the majority of your time forming the habits, forming the patterns that have actually created a groove or an identity or personality, which is the role that you play in social situations. Most of this was determined before the age of 7. And the Jesuits say, "Give me that boy till age 7 and I will give you the man." Whatever house you're in, pay particular attention to the diagonal. These are the people that are the opposite to you. They're the ones that are therefore going to complete you. When we look at long-term partnerships, and this is either personal or professional and over 10 years, these are the most successful, resilient partnerships in people's lives. Over 90% are going to be diagonal. We are designed as humans to be able to partner well with the people that complete us. So take particular care and good notes when we are unpacking the diagonal quadrant. The house of the king. It begins and ends here. King of the 4 houses. So at some point we all started as that petulant little high chair prince. And as we go through that cycle, which we call the hero's journey, we return back home again as kings who are powerful enough to create our kingdom that elevates and benefits everyone in it. So the king is the house that sits high struggle, big engagement, and also high connection, which makes you, if you identified as this king, it makes you somebody who is highly engaged and activated and curious about many different things. And you're probably one of those guys who wants to travel the world and wants to have a couple different side hustles at work, has got about 5 different books started, and squirrel, you find yourself getting distracted by the next shiny object. And the risk of this is the fact that when we start saying yes to too many things, our magical, divine, creative, synergizing energy becomes diffused. And so instead of being a fast river that's able to carve down through rocks, we become a lazy swamp. And that is the shadow of the king. Now the gold, when they're actually pushing, carving, and focused, is the king is the one that is able to bring innovation, change, transformation to the kingdom. And so holding that tension of, I need to be able to stay focused, but I need to be able to stay inspired, is going to be that endless challenge of the king. So the king greatly benefits from the ability to say no. You're going to have to kill 9 out of 10 of your projects so that that one of them actually happens. So to do this, you cannot push the world. It's too big. You cannot boil the ocean. You don't have the resources. But if you can take all of that power that you're bringing to the world and focus it on a singular object, now that one's going to move. And to do this, we use the metaphor of a magic sword. This is Excalibur to King Arthur. So this was, in the beginning of the story, a boy. He's a page. He has a dream of a round table, but he's not able to create it until he pulls Excalibur from the stone. That's the magical moment that he took all of that divine energy and inspiration and creativity and focused on a single project, which then transformed his life and everyone around him into Camelot. So the king has got to be able to partner, balance, engage with either their internal magician to be able to shore up all of their systems and their procedures, or partner with those other magicians. And the challenge for the kings is that a lot of times these vital people are living in the shadows and you don't give them time to speak. You overlook them or you just run past them. So be patient, kings. Find your magicians These are the people who are the analytics. They're the synthesizers. They're the ones that are going to be able to sit back and gather information, and they're going to eventually implement something that is absolutely unique to their quadrant. The magician is not just a smart person who has information and is nerdy and reads books. The magician is actually the craft person of dreams. They're the ones that create the magical sword that creates the king to be able to manifest their kingdom. The magician in the story of Camelot is Merlin. And the little known fact about Merlin is that he is actually the one who crafted Excalibur and put it in the stone that King Arthur could find and empower King Arthur to be able to manifest the dream that was Camelot, that was the Round Table, that was the Holy Grail. This is the reason why we keep telling that story, because it's a metaphor. And in today's world, that magical sword is called a business plan. It's called a grant. It's called an app. It's called an edit. It's called all of these other things that make dreams into a reality. The House of the Magician does this. However, there's a tremendous amount of gold in that power, but it comes from shadow. And the shadow is, for all of you magicians who identified in that house, is the fact, if you ask yourself, how often do I have all the time and all the resources that I need to create that flawless outcome? And your answer is inevitably going to be never. Because the world doesn't run at your pace. The world runs at king pace, because kings are the ones that push the tempo. And kings realize that to be able to create, they are going to have chaos. And they surf in those waves that the magicians drowned in. So the magician's shadow is that instead of drowning in waves of chaos and uncertainty and facing that imperfection, which is the monster that lives in the shadows, it's much easier to disengage, to isolate, and disappear. And so be mindful, magicians, when you find yourself taking all of your sword pieces, all of your genius, all of your perspective and wisdom off the table, just to make your life easier, you are crippling the kingdom. So stay engaged. And to do this, you're going to have to access your king.